safety. That's the number one priority right now. As you know, we have this fire burning at the fertilizer plant that has the potential to explode. And so officials are taking all of the deliberate steps to assess the situation, to evacuate a mile radius, and to take the steps that they need to take to eventually extinguish this fire and to have the hazard subside. I think the coordination that has occurred here is significant. Made some calls to local officials early yesterday morning. My Secretary of the Department of Public Safety, Eddie Buffalo, who's here now, has been here. Our Emergency Management Director, Will Ray, has been here. Our Director and Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, Kevin Monroe and Eric Wilson, are here. We have Senator Paul Lowe and Representative Amber Baker, who are also here, and a lot of other public officials who are coming together to make sure this is a coordinated effort to keep people safe. I know that everybody has a lot of questions, and I asked probably 20 questions in the room when I was there to get information. I do know that the state is providing resources and that we've offered resources to the local officials here. I think they have a good handle on it. And now I'm going to recognize Winston-Salem Mayor Alan Joines. And then I think there will be some other people who speak, and then we'll be glad to answer questions. So, Mayor Joines.
Thank you, Governor Cooper. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just give Governor Cooper and the state of North Carolina the thanks of the citizens of Winston-Salem. The governor called me early yesterday morning. He was an early riser. He was up and to call me and say that the state was ready to help in whatever way it could. As you heard, they've been helping in a number of ways. We are facing and have faced and are continuing to face a very serious situation. Chief Mayo will talk more about that. We continue to ask folks who have not left the area to please evacuate. Still yet, we're not over the hump yet. We have had conversations and had great cooperation from the company itself, from Weaver Fertilizer Company. I just was talking with one of the representatives walking up here, and I'm going to go ahead and announce that they have pledged $100,000 to the community to help reimburse some of our agencies who are working with citizens who've been displaced and other impacted folks here in the community, so we greatly appreciate that. They've been tremendous cooperative with our law enforcement, with our public responder folks. So we thank you all for being here. Let me just please turn it over to, I recognize we do have a number of council members here. Councilmember Kevin Mundy, Councilmember Barbara Burke, and Councilmember Annette Scipio are here as well. But got to thank Chief Mayo and his team for the extraordinary job they did and the cooperation of Chief Thompson and the police department as well. So Chief Mayo, if you would please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I'm Trey Mayo. I'm the fire chief for the city of Winston-Salem, and I would like to echo Mayor Joines' comments about the appreciation we have for all of our aid partners, both locally at the state and federal level. Governor, appreciate you being here today. I have some updates for you from the 4:30 press briefing that Chief Wade did this morning. And I want to start out by thanking members of the media for the great turnout that we've had here. We're 40 hours on scene now, and we appreciate all of you showing up and helping us get the message out through your various channels to keep the public educated about what's going on and to help us maintain that firm stance on that 1 mile evacuation radius around the plant. That remains intact and will remain intact for an undetermined time. We had if you have been here before, you've heard me kick around potentially drawing that radius in at 36 hours. We are now beyond 36 hours, and we have not reduced it. We also talked about at 48 hours that we may be in a situation to allow folks back into their homes, and that is not going to happen. I don't think we're going to be there. 48 hours would be about 7 o'clock tonight. This is Wednesday. We're just not going to be there. We've got too much product, too many unknowns. So we appreciate everybody's patience, but we again strongly recommend everybody being out of that 1 mile radius around the plant. In no particular order, we have now about 25 agencies, local, state, and federal, on scene assisting with handling this incident. We've gotten some questions about the inspection reports, the code enforcement inspection reports for the fertilizer plant, and our marketing and communications department is going to release that information after the close of this press conference. There also, the National Weather Service has set up a page specific to this incident to help with wind direction and rain forecasts and those sorts of things. We will share that link with you as well. That will also come from the marketing and communications department. This morning, since daylight, our focus has been on, you remember me talking about a rail car that is adjacent to the facility on the back of the plant. The most up-to-date number, we initially thought there were 100 tons of ammonium nitrate in that rail car. We think the more accurate quantity estimate is 90 tons, which, in the grand scheme of things is not a significant amount of difference. We have been doing some reconnaissance on that rail car this morning. The concern that rail car was off-gassing when we arrived on scene Monday night, and the concern was that it had undergone enough heating from radiant fire exposure that it had started to kind of cook on its own and go through a self-sustaining heat generating reaction. The reconnaissance that we've been able, the reconnaissance that we've been able to conduct this morning indicates that is not happening. We also had a concern that some of the material in that rail car had become molten and run out into a pit that has a 40-ton capacity that is under one end of that rail car. The reconnaissance, and we did that this morning with the assistance of the Winston-Salem Police Department's Hazardous Devices Unit bomb robot. We were able to determine that it does not appear that any of the product has become molten and run out of the car, so we feel good about that. In the next 3 or 4 hours, we're going to have another State Highway Patrol helicopter up with one of the fire department's hazardous materials specialists on it to do a live. Drone footage is fine, but it's not the same thing as having human eyes in the sky to be able to look at the situation and take some high quality photographs. So we're going to do that aerial reconnaissance here in the next 3 or 4 hours. We're also going to position a ladder truck on the West Rock campus, it backs up to the fertilizer plant, and get in a position to be able to cool that rail car. Even though indications are that nothing's going on there now, you never know. Ammonium nitrate is unpredictable enough that we are preparing for forward-looking operational periods, and just getting in a position if something were to happen and the behavior of the fire were to change, we will already be in a position to keep that rail car cool. We have gotten a few questions about whether there were employees on site at the plant, who made the initial 911 call, those sorts of things. And we have been able to determine that the initial 911 call did come from an employee on site at the plant. There was also a rumor yesterday that there was a plant employee that was unaccounted for, and that is inaccurate. All plant employees, there are 36 employees in the plant, and everybody has been accounted for. The EPA is on site, and they were able to get some remote monitors put up last night that are able to transmit real-time air quality data back to the command center. And what they're measuring is outside the 1 mile radius, and they are still primarily measuring nitrogen dioxide and some compounds of sulfur and some just general undescribable particulate matter. The products of combustion, we still classify those generally as just irritants. We would expect people to be exposed to them, to sneezing, coughing, running watery eyes and nose, that sort of thing. Some people may experience a little bit of skin irritation. We still recommend that people not be outside exercising. If you have respiratory illnesses, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, emphysema, those sorts of things, for you to remain indoors and out of the smoke. Keep your doors and windows shut. If you were in the city last night, there was a pretty good blanket of smoke over north and west Winston-Salem. That was due to atmospheric conditions, primarily because of low wind. It just kind of lets that smoke just kind of float out over the ground. There's no wind to blow it away. But as we've had some warming today and the breeze has picked up a little bit, we're getting some better lift with that smoke. So smoke conditions have improved today. But we can't control Mother Nature, and as the wind changes and humidity changes, that smoke's going to move around and lift and lower as atmospheric conditions cause it to do. We're forecast for rain to begin overnight and continue into tomorrow and Friday. At this point, any water application onto the fire is deemed a generally positive thing. Rain is sort of a break-even proposition. It creates some runoff, but it also creates some dilution, of products that are running off. So we're going to take the rain as generally a positive turn of events in this incident. That concludes my notes. I'll take any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
So you had this window, actually 2 windows, the 36 hours and the 48 hours, and you've determined that we're still not out of the woods yet. And I'm wondering what kind of variables or criteria you're looking at to say, okay, now things are finally safe.
The question is about how do we determine what our window is on when things get safe enough to kind of let people come back inside the evacuation zone and allow firefighters to go on site and start doing some closer reconnaissance and fire control operations. So we're looking at temperatures in various places to see if anything that's reacting is getting better or worse, or just kind of maintaining a steady state. I think I mentioned earlier we're going to have a State Highway Patrol helicopter back here this afternoon and get eyes and get some good aerial photos, and we will sit down with plant representatives and try to determine exactly what it is that's on fire. If there's a structural member of the building on fire, that's one thing. If there's a pile of ammonium nitrate on fire, that's a different situation to consider. So we're going to try to use our aerial surveillance to do that sort of, make those sort of determinations. The challenge with this situation and saying it's going to be 36, 48, 72 hours a month, the challenge is having access to full information and the unpredictable nature of the chemical that we are talking about. Ammonium nitrate has a history of being unpredictable in the way that it reacts, the way that it responds to heat, the way that it responds to pressure, to shock. It just is sort of an enigma, and we are giving it due regard because of its history.
So it can burn without exploding?
It can, but so ammonium nitrate in itself is not flammable. It is an oxidizer. So what it does is cause everything around it to burn. but there are components. So this is 34% ammonium nitrate. So there are things there besides the ammonium nitrate. But when you have that oxidizer in close proximity, or in some cases chemically bonded, then you've got, once a fire starts, you've got something to perpetuate. As long as you've got fuel, you've got something there to perpetuate that fire.
Thank you. Here's a question for you, sir, and the mayor as well. Yesterday you said that you could not make an evacuation mandatory because it's up to elected officials. The city manager said that's up to the mayor. Mayor, can you maybe explain why you haven't made this a mandatory evacuation? And he also said that you may not have the manpower. Have you asked the state for additional help to make this happen?
And I'm happy to, I may be able to speak a little more pointedly to that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. It is a difficult decision and one that we've talked about. However, if you think about, there are almost 6,500 individuals in this area here that we don't know how many have exactly evacuated. It's really a logistics issue of trying to make it all happen, getting our folks back into the area to get the word out. It comes down to, not physically, but encouraging someone face to face to leave. So at this point, we're still keeping it as a recommended action of our citizens.
Do you feel it's necessary to make it mandatory?
I'm sorry?
Do you feel it's necessary to make it mandatory?
We'll just continue to monitor it and see what might need to be the next step there. And Chief Mayo might be able to add some additional color to that.
The reality of a mandatory evacuation is it's difficult to carry it out on the ground. You're talking about going door to door and essentially physically removing people from their homes and places of business, and the staffing level, the personnel it takes to do that. You're putting we have said you don't need to be within a mile of this plant. To carry out a mandatory evacuation requires us to put emergency personnel inside that 1 mile radius, and then it's just not a matter. I mean, you can't put up a fence around that 1 mile and say, okay, everybody's out, they're going to stay out. You have to continue to patrol and enforce that mandatory evacuation. It's really not a practical thing.
And we knew, following up on that question, that the night of, that fire crews did go around and make announcements and ask people to leave their homes. Has there been any more of that out in these neighborhoods today? And do we know maybe how many people have made the decision to leave that 1 mile radius?
The question is about, do we know how many people remain inside the 1 mile evacuation area, and efforts that we made to notify people. Beginning Monday night, we have saturated the area with messaging. We have used code red messaging, we have used broadcast media, print media, social media. We've put fire trucks and police cars on the ground with public address systems to notify people. We have used the emergency alert on your cellular, on wireless devices, and I think we popped about 3,000 or 4,000 wireless devices with that mechanism. Short of going door to door, which is really not practical, we have, again, I use the term, we have saturated the area with messaging through all means to communicate to folks that it is not safe and that they need to leave.
I would like to know, if it's not safe to spend the night within a mile, why are all the roads within this mile still open? And yesterday afternoon, I drove right up Indiana and parked basically almost across from the plant gate. There was no police officer, no fire official, or anybody there to chase me away. So I guess it's a two-part question about that, and also why University and 52 go through this area.
Did you know that there was the 1 mile evacuation area?
Yes.
Why did you go inside that 1 mile evacuation area?
I was off work and I thought it was safe.
What message did we send out to say that it was safe?
Because I was out there the day before, and every time I tried to get close to it, there was a police officer saying, "Get away."
So I would just state again, our capacity to control entry and exit from a 1 mile area, that's a 1 mile radius, so it's 2 miles across. So when you talk about that area, our resources and ability to enforce and patrol that area is limited. So that's why we are strongly encouraging folks not to enter that area. And I would remind folks that within the area that don't have anywhere to go, the education building at the fairgrounds is is available as a shelter. And back to your question, we did have, we do know that the hotels in the area have seen an uptick in reservations. So with that and the and the numbers at the shelters, we do know that some people have evacuated, but a specific number we don't know.
Are there signs on 52 that tell people don't go down this highway, you're going through an evacuation zone? And
Not-
University Parkway as well.
Not that I'm aware of.
Chief, a question. We've heard that some of the figures just saying, there's maybe 3 times more ammonium nitrate here than was in Texas. Worst case scenario is, because a lot of the comments and, concerns that I've heard from people are 1 mile may not be enough in case this thing blows. Worst case scenario, what could that look like? Is that blowing Winston-Salem off the map?
The fact of the matter is there is enough at the beginning of this incident, there was enough ammonium nitrate on hand for this to be one of the worst explosions in U.S. history. But again, our capacity to evacuate is limited, and that's why we ask people to leave voluntarily. So we've had to make a lot of difficult decisions with limited information. We make the best decision that we can based on the information we have available. And I'll tell you all that in this business, making the best decision is not the same thing as making a good decision. Sometimes you have to make the best decision when you don't have a good decision to choose from.
I mean, sir,
But
on
is
that
1
note,
mile enough? Should that be expanded potentially?
The experts that we have been in contact with since Monday night, and there are experts around the country who are authorities on ammonium nitrate, they are in general agreement that 1 mile is an appropriate evacuation zone.
sir, on that note, you said could be one of the biggest explosions in U.S. history. That's a strong statement. Has the governor, why haven't you issued a state of emergency? You also talked about using messaging to reach out to people. What about families who do not speak English? How are they informed timely?
We have a
What
lady
are
right here.
agencies doing to make sure they're safe?
Lady right here with us, Scotty.
Yeah, we have somebody here who's translating our news briefings for the for Spanish-speaking populations.
And then you talk about limited capacity. Has the state or city issue asked for the National Guard? Governor, can you explain why does this warrant a state of emergency?
So we're ready to take whatever steps are necessary. We're relying on local officials here who are on the ground, who have all of the information. If they ask us for things, then we will provide them. Usually a state of emergency helps with transportation and those kinds of things, and I don't think we're facing those issues at this point. But we are ready to provide and have already provided help and material to the local officials here.
Can you clarify what you're talking about limited capacity? Because it seems like you're getting resources, so what is limited specifically?
It's important for the general public to understand when you have an event of this scale, there is not a fire station on every corner. There are not 1 million National Guard troops that can be brought to bear on this incident. Again, we are making what we believe to be the best decisions in consultation with experts in this subject area around the country. And again, sometimes you don't have a good choice to make, but we're making what we believe to be the best decisions given the information we have available to us.
Question, there have been some folks that we've spoken with who say, they've been pleading and petitioning for this plant to be moved out of this community for over 3 decades. But it fell on deaf ears, nothing has been done about it, particularly in the black communities. Why is this plant that could potentially be so dangerous in a case like this, we're now saying worst case scenario, why is it allowed to be in an area that is concentrated with other families?
That is a question so the question is about why is this plant located here? The answer to that question is beyond the scope of the fire department's authority.
Is there anyone else, Mayor, Governor?
Well, I would just say this company's been there for 75 years. It's not something that just moved in. It is inspected regularly. Matter of fact, the state, I believe, inspected it January the 2nd or 3rd, something of that nature. We inspected it in December 20th or thereabouts to make sure that it's operating as safely as possible. So right now it's operating legally, and there was really no legal way that we could force them to move.
And Governor Cooper, your message to people who haven't evacuated
So I would ask them to evacuate, and in fact, they put other people at risk when they refused to evacuate. In fact, I talked to some emergency personnel who had already gone to make some service calls to people who were sick or ill. They had to risk themselves going into that 1 mile radius to bring them out. So my message to them is not only protect yourself and your family, but you're also protecting emergency responders who may have to come and help you.
And what would you say is your biggest concern with this situation, being one of the first, almost largest possible explosions in the state of the country?
The number one concern is to make sure that we save lives and to make sure that people don't get hurt. And I think local officials have worked very hard to prevent that from happening thus far. And that's a positive. But we're not at the end of this yet.
At this time, the governor has answered a lot of questions, as has the mayor and the fire chief. We're going to end the press conference at this time, and there'll be notifications to you when the next press conference will be on this incident. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate you.
Mayor Joins, if this were to be a total loss, the building were to be a total loss, would it be any different than
Thank you, man. Have a good flight. Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Spanish media wants to ask a few questions.
To whom?
To me.
Please,
I know they're
please.
not taking it.
Yes, please, please.
Ready
Go
to
do it. Go do it.